Another very important part of the Outlook screen that I think should be turned on is the reading pane. For example, when I click on an email, I like to be able to read what's in the email without having to double click each email. To turn on the reading pane, click the View tab in the ribbon, and in the Layout group, click the Reading Pane button. You can have your reading pane on the right or on the bottom. Let's start with the right. When I click right, I now have the reading pane on the right hand side of my screen. And what I can do is click on an email and I can read the content of an email. The only problem with having the reading pane on the right hand side is I have very few columns to sort my emails by. So I actually prefer to have my reading pane on the bottom. So from the View tab in the ribbon and in the Layout group, I'll click the Reading Pane button and choose Bottom. Now I can easily sort by subject or by from, just by clicking the column headings, and I have more column headings to sort by. The other thing are the reading pane options. As I click on an email, I can choose whether I want it to automatically show as having been read or unread by going to the reading pane options. The reading pane options can be turned on and turned off. For example, I can mark an item as read automatically after 5 seconds. Or I can mark an item as read automatically when I move from one email to the next. Or I can press a single key and mark an item as read, such as the spacebar. I actually prefer that Outlook doesn't mark items as read automatically when I move from one email to another, or after 5 seconds, or after I press a key. So I actually turn all these options off. Just because I've sat on it for 5 seconds doesn't mean I've read it, and also just because I've moved from one email to another doesn't mean I've read it. So turn all of these items off and click OK. What I have in my inbox is 6 unread emails, and I can tell they're unread because they're bold and blue, and most importantly, to the right of the word inbox in my navigation pane, I see the number 6 appear in brackets, and this indicates me there are 6 unread messages. If I want to mark an item as read, so I have read this email, I could right click it and mark it as read. And so now this email is no longer bold, it's been read, and also my 6 has dropped to 5. If I want to mark it as unread, I can right click and mark it as unread again, and my number goes back to 6. I prefer that as I read an item that I then mark it manually as read or unread, and you can do this by just right clicking, marking an item as read, right click the next email, mark it as read, and so on. If I wish to mark it as unread, I'll simply right click back on the email and mark it as unread. If you want to use shortcut keys, you can use Control Enter or Control Q to mark an item as having been read. So I'll press Control Enter, and now this item is marked as having been read. I'll also make this one read, Control Enter or Control Q, and I can go through and mark each item as read as I've read it. But at any point in time, if I want to mark it as unread and I want to use a shortcut key, Control U is unread, and I have a number 1 appearing in brackets, and Control Q, I've read it, and now I have no numbers in the brackets because I've read all my emails. So think about how you'd like your reading pane set. I recommend you have the reading pane on the bottom and that you have all the options turned off and that you manually mark items read or unread as you work with your emails.